We're going over some basic salary cap terms. And then we're going to take a look at a contract for Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. That's coming your way next on the LockedOn Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the NFL. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name is Patricia Traina, and on today's show, I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of some of the terms that you might be hearing over the next several weeks as the Giants get into free agency, as they get into contracts, some terms that you need to know and how they affect the salary cap. You know, I get a lot of questions about the salary cap and what works, what a team can do, what counts, what doesn't count, and all that good stuff. So I'm going to go over some basics with you in this particular show. And then I'm going to pivot and we're going to take a look at what I think Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones will end up with as far as contracts go. So before I get into this, I just want to put a disclaimer out there for those of you who listen to the podcast on our audio platforms. You might want to check this one out on YouTube because I do have some visuals that I'm going to put on the screen and refer to throughout the podcast. And if you can get by without, seeing the visuals, then great. But if you kind of want to follow along with what I'm saying, you might want to see it on YouTube. I think it'll make a big difference for you. So with that said, let us get into the crux of things. So we're going to start off with elements to know in a contract. Now, you hear these terms all the time, but basically I'm going to explain what some of them mean. And then I'm going to talk about APY and so on. So let's start off with P5, which stands for paragraph 5, or is otherwise known as base salary. Quite simply, P5 in a standard NFL contract is the player's annual compensation, their base salary, not counting signing bonuses, roster bonuses, incentives, any of that stuff. And I'm going to put on the screen here the actual P5 from the standard player contract. You'll see that it breaks down per year what the base salary is going to be. And there's an additional paragraph about, bonuses as called for in the contract, traveling expenses, so on and so forth. So there's other elements that go into the P5 salary that, some count against the cap, some do not. But for the most part, this is what we refer to when we talk about P5. And the P5 salary, or the base salary, is divided over 18 weeks. All right. It's a 17-game season, but it's 18 weeks because you've got the bye week. So that's why a lot of times if a player signs for, let's say, 1.8 million halfway through the season, he now gets a prorated amount for the remaining number of weeks he is on the roster. So he's not going to get the full 1.8 million. It's going to prorate to however many weeks he's left on the roster. So you take that 1.8 million, divide that by 18, and that's what the player gets per week. And then you just multiply that times the number of weeks he's on the roster. That's his actual P5 cap hit. All right. So that's how P5 works. All right. The next thing we want to talk about is signing bonus. Signing bonus is just as the name suggests. The player signs his name to a contract and he's given a check for whatever the agreed upon amount is. All right. Now, it's important to understand something about the signing bonus. Number one, the signing bonus although it is cash up front, for accounting purposes, it is prorated over the life of the contract up to 5 years. So let's say somebody signs a 6-year deal and he gets a $5 million signing bonus. It's only going to count 1 million, 1 million, 1 million for 5 years. All right. Even though the player is going to get that full 5 million up front when he signs the contract, for accounting purposes, the signing bonus is spread out over the life of the contract up to 5 years. And that is done to prohibit teams from giving outrageous signing bonuses and tacking on a bunch of voidable years that, for the purpose of thinning out the signing bonus's effect on the cap. You can't do that. You are capped at 5 years with prorating the signing bonus. And in terms of the counting, when a player's contract is terminated and he has remaining years left on the deal with signing bonus, if he is a pre-June 1st cut, the signing bonus accelerates. Whatever's left accelerates into the current cap year. So again, so let's say the player has 2 million left on a signing bonus. He's cut. That goes into the current cap year. If he is designated as a post-June 1st cut, it's 1 million this year and 1 million next year. But any cap savings isn't available until June 1st. So that's the difference when we talk about a pre-June 1st and a post-June 1st transaction. All right, let's talk about roster bonuses. As the name suggests, it's a bonus for being on the roster. All right, so most times you will see players 5 days after the start of the new league year, which this year is March 15th. 5 days later, they get a roster bonus. That roster bonus is cash up front and it counts for the current league year. Okay, unless it's split, which is a totally different animal, and you don't see that happen very often, it counts for the current league year. So the roster bonus is a way to kind of boost the APY, which is average per year, up so that the player's total APY is, for that year is more in line with his peers at his position. So roster bonuses can take a couple of forms. They can be paid out 5 days after the start of the new league year. They could be paid out when a guy reports to training camp, at which point that would be known as a reporting bonus, or it could be paid out if the guy makes the 53-man roster out of training camp. So it depends on the verbiage and what the team wants to do. The roster bonus is not necessarily guaranteed. Now, there are exceptions to that rule, obviously. And one such exception that I can think of is Kenny Galladay's contract. Kenny Galladay in 2023, and I'll pop this on the screen for you here. Kenny Galladay has a base salary of $13.25 million, prorated signing bonus $3.4 million, and a roster bonus of $4.5 million, of which it is guaranteed, which means, simply put, that regardless if Kenny Galladay is on the roster as of March 19th, which is when the bonus is due, Kenny Galladay is going to get that $4.5 million roster bonus. Just another reason why that contract is just so horrible. Not all roster bonuses are guaranteed, right? Most times teams will just give them as a way to boost the APY. Not a smart way to do that unless you know that that guy's going to be around for you for a number of years. But Kenny Galladay that's one contract, which is the exception where that roster bonus is guaranteed. Now, you'll see also that he has roster bonuses due on in 2024 and 2025. I'm sorry, 2024 only. The one in 2024 is not guaranteed. So the Giants, if they cut him this year, which it is believed that will be the case, they won't have to pay him that $3.5 million. That's why last year, when so many of you asked, well, why didn't they cut Kenny Galladay? Because they would have had to eat $4.5 million in addition to, whatever they would have had to eat in terms of dead money. So it was better for the Giants to just carry Galladay, wait till this year when they have a little better cap situation. And if they cut him as a pre-June 1st transaction. They saved $6.7 million with a $14.7 million dead money hit. If they wait until after June 1st, $13.5 million is the savings and $7.9 million becomes the dead money hit. And that's what I think they're going to do, by the way. I think it's going to be a post-June 1st cut, and they'll use that money to sign their draft class, as well as carry it into the summer and into the start of the season. Should be enough to get them through the year, I would think. So that's what I think the Giants are going to do with Kenny Golladay. All right, getting back to the elements of a contract that you need to know. There is something known as an option bonus. Now, this is not to be confused with an option year. All right, an option year is obviously, whether or not a team decides to pick up the players, additional years in the player's contract. An option bonus is strictly kind of like a signing bonus, but the difference is when the option bonus kicks in, it usually kicks in later in the contract. So let's say, for example, a player signs a 5-year deal, and in year 4 of the deal, they have an option bonus. If the team decides to exercise that option bonus, then that option bonus will prorate effective starting that year for the remainder of the contract. So in other words, the money won't hit until year 4 if the option is picked up. Now, the advantage of having an option bonus is not only do you naturally inflate the contract, kind of give the player a raise to keep him competitive as far as earnings go, but if you decide after, say, 3 years, using our 5-year example, that you don't want the player on the roster anymore, you can get out of it. And the only thing you would have to be charged for would be the dead money in the prorated signing bonus, whatever's left in the dead money from the proration, whether it's a pre-June 1st or a post-June 1st cut. That's all you would be on the hook for. So the option year, just basically, if you decline it, now you're off the hook, and you can get some nice savings if you're the team looking to move on from the player. So that's something to keep in mind, because I do think, by the way, we might see option bonuses in one or more of the top free agent contracts that the Giants are looking to get done. More on that coming up. All right, there's a workout bonus, or otherwise known as easy money. The way workout bonuses work is the team has, obviously, its off-season program, starting with weightlifting, strength and conditioning. Then it moves to on-field work, and then you have OTAs, and then, of course, mandatory minicamp. And the threshold for a player to cash in on collecting a workout bonus is usually about 90%. I think it varies according to team, but as a rule, it's about 90%. So if a player attends 90% of the scheduled team activities, he collects the workout bonus. For a guy like Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, that's easy money. If those guys are going to be around anyway in East Rutherford, and they're going to be working every day, easy money. Doesn't get any easier than that. And worth noting is that the Buffalo Bills, from where Joe Shane came from, they made heavy use of workout bonuses, and their workout bonuses weren't cheap either. Guys were getting like 6-figure workout bonuses, 100,000, 250, 500,000. I expect Daniel Jones to get a 500,000 per year workout bonus, again, as a way to inflate his APY for each year. All right. The last thing I want to talk about is incentives. And there's 2 types of incentives. There is the likely to be earned incentive and the not likely to be earned incentive. So for this, I'm going to put on the screen Daniel Jones's stats so that we can kind of take a look at stuff, and I can explain this a little bit better, I think, with this visual. All right, so Daniel Jones, let's look at 2022, because that's the year that's relevant for the purpose of discussion here. A likely to be earned incentive is an incentive that basically the player was able to accomplish the year prior. So in the case of Daniel Jones, he threw for 15 touchdowns. So if he has an incentive in his contract that pays him $500,000 if he throws for at least 15 touchdowns, that's considered a likely to be earned incentive. And because it's a likely to be earned incentive, it counts for the current year's cap. All right. So the thinking is here again, he already threw for 15 touchdowns last year. He should be able to do it again. Hence, it's likely to be earned. By contrast, a not likely to be earned incentive is something that the player didn't accomplish the year prior. So an example there might be, Daniel Jones, if you make the Pro Bowl, we will give you $500,000 as a bonus. And if he makes it, then great. What happens is he gets the payout. If he doesn't make it, it's like the payout didn't even exist. Now, how do likely to be earned and not likely to be earned affect the salary cap? This is important. All right. Likely to be earned, they will hit the current year's cap. So if you see Daniel Jones has likely to be earned incentives, 15 touchdowns, 3,000 passing yards, those automatically get deducted from the current year's cap. If he does not reach those milestones, the Giants will get a cap credit for the following year. All right. That's why a lot of times you'll hear me say we've got to wait on cap space for all the postseason accounting to be done. That's what I'm referring to. Who met their incentives, who didn't, who got not likely to be earned incentives, and so on and so forth. That's all part of the postseason accounting. Hence why this cap stuff can drive you crazy. All right. Now let's talk about not likely to be earned. All right. That does not hit the current year's cap. It will hit, however, the following year's cap. So again, using our example with Daniel Jones, if he has a not likely to be earned incentive that is tied into the Pro Bowl, let's say it's for $250,000, that money will not hit the 2023 cap. It will, however, hit the 2024 cap if Jones meets that criteria. And if he doesn't, then the money doesn't come out of the 2024 pot. It's that simple. So that's how you can use incentives, the likely to be earned and the not likely to be earned, to kind of finagle the cap a little bit, finagle the APY that the player is going to make each year. So not a bad deal. Now, a lot of you always ask me about the APY and the effect it would have on the Giants cap. Specifically, well, if the Giants, sign Saquon to $15 million a year, and they sign Daniel to $35 million a year, that's what, $50 million? And they only have $44 million in cap space as according to over the cap right now. How are they going to afford to do anything else? I'm going to show you. All right, on the screen, I have Mark Lewinsky's contract from over the cap. Always, 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 you will find that the first year of a new contract has a low cap number. And the reason for that is twofold. Number one, the player gets gets that signing bonus. That is cash in hand. So in the case of Lewinsky, when he signed with the Giants, he got a check for $4.5 million as his signing bonus. So therefore the Giants say, okay, you know what? $4.5 million, we're going to lower your base salary to 1.25, which I believe was the minimum, the veteran minimum for a guy with 8 accrued seasons. So there's a difference between cash payment and the actual cap hit. Cash simply means what the guy is collecting that year to put in his bank. But in terms of, accounting purposes, prorated signing bonuses are prorated. So that's why you see, if you look at this contract here, that's why you see a jump up in his base salary for 2023 and 2024. The signing bonus prorate stays the same. They also give Lewinsky a $1 million roster bonus if he is on the roster, I believe, as of March 19th. So and then there's the per game roster bonus. So he gets up to $300,000 if he plays in all 17 games during the regular season. So this is why I say when a player signs a new deal, don't panic if you hear that, oh my God, this guy's getting 35 million APY and this guy's getting 15 million APY, because chances are that first year of the deal is not going to be anything close to those numbers that are being reported. So hopefully that makes some sense to you in terms of trying to figure out what the Giants can do. And, this is another reason why, if you're the Giants, you don't want to go crazy with extending guys and signing guys all in one shot. You want to stagger it. All right. So by staggering, I mean, okay, if you're the Giants, your priorities are obviously Daniel Jones. They're obviously Saquon Barkley, maybe Julian Love, and maybe Dexter Lawrence. You want to get him extended, even though he's playing on his option year of his rookie deal. You want to try and lower that money. All right. And that's a topic for when we do the live show. If you want to know more about that, I can explain that. So meanwhile, you have Andrew Thomas, who is now eligible to have his deal extended. You have Xavier McKinney. Any guy who's on a rookie contract who's put 3 years into the league can now have his deal extended. This is why I don't think you're going to see Andrew Thomas have his deal extended, because they're going to pick up his option. His 5th-year option is going to be picked up. No doubt in my mind. They have to make that decision, I think, the first Tuesday after the draft, and they will do it. McKinney is now entering, I believe, his 4th season with the Giants. So with him, I think the situation there is they're going to wait to see how his rehab with that hand injury that he had, how that continues before deciding what to do there. So I could see McKinney potentially being the type of guy that they would maybe look to extend if all things go well, probably mid-season. Won't see it this year, this offseason though. So that's what you want to do. You want to stagger it so that, okay, by the time you do Andrew Thomas, he's going to be on the low end of the first year of his deal, which is going to be a low number, while Daniel and hopefully Saquon are now on to year 2 and year 3. So you stagger everything so that you don't have everything swelling up in one shot. That's what happened to the Giants last year. They had everything swell up, and that's why they got into cap hell. So it's important to stagger. That's why also you don't want to go crazy with signing a bunch of free agents, at random and basically printing up money, because ultimately you're going to have to pay the piper. And the Giants paid the piper dearly last year. All right. Coming up, what kind of deals might Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones expect? What are some of the elements that might fall into these contracts? Don't go anywhere. I'll tell you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, are you looking for a delicious treat but don't want the fat and calories that come with it? Then you got to try a Built Bar. What makes Built Bar so good is they are covered in 100% real chocolate. That's right, real chocolate. And they come in unbelievable flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, and my personal favorite, coconut almond. These delicious protein bars taste like a candy bar, but don't have the guilt. Most Built Bars have about 130 calories and 4 grams of sugar with a whopping 17 grams of protein to keep you full and satisfied. And best of all, right now, you don't have to wait for a shipment to come from Built.com. Simply pop into your local Walmart or Sam's Club and grab yourself a box of Built Bars. You can thank me later. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the LockedOn Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and we're talking cap. We're talking contracts. And if your head is spinning, don't worry, you're not alone. This is what I go through every time I do cap work. But hopefully these explanations make some sense, provide some clarity. And just as a side note, I am looking to schedule next week. It looks like now it's going to be with Tana and Dog. We will do a salary cap themed show. So if you have questions, I will do my best to try to answer them during that live show. We'll also talk about Giant stuff, direction and stuff like that, but it will also, incorporate the salary cap because I know people are going to have questions. So that's coming up, and I'm looking to do it towards the end of next week. I've got to just hear back from Dog as to when he's available. And then once we have that, we can go ahead and set it up. So I hope you'll join us as we continue to bring you 5 days a week here on the LockedOn Giants podcast. All right, let's now talk about contracts for Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. Now, I'm going to start with Daniel and what I think the Giants are going to do. This is just what I would do. All right. Daniel, I would give him a 5-year, $175 million deal, which averages out to $35 million per year. Now, before I go any further, I just want to make a comment about the total value of the contracts. As you know, they mean nothing. What counts most is guaranteed money. And for quarterbacks, usually they get about 60 to 65% of their deals fully guaranteed. So just because you hear one amount, if you hear, Daniel Jones got 5 years, 175 million, doesn't mean that that total amount is fully guaranteed. So that's important to keep in mind. So usually with guaranteed money, it varies according to the position. Quarterbacks generally get a lot of guaranteed money because the expectation is they're going to be there for a long time. All right. So getting back to Daniel, 5 years, 175 million. I think he gets obviously a signing bonus. I think you will see him get a roster bonus. There will be both likely to be earned and not likely to be earned incentives. And I would not be surprised if there is an option bonus in there after 3 years. And here's why I say that. For the longest time, I was of the opinion that the Giants probably don't want to go more than 3 years with Daniel, because as good as he was last year, there's still a lot of things that he needs to answer, such as, can he make plays from the pocket? Can he throw the ball deep down the field? These are all things that, we didn't see enough of last year. We saw Daniel do what the coaches asked him to do, which is why they kept saying, he's done everything we've asked him to do. But it's not complete yet. Can he move off of his first read? These are all things that he still needs to show he could do. While there is optimism that he will get better, continue to get better, because remember, you go back to Josh Allen in Buffalo, it took him a few years before he really blossomed into a top-tier quarterback. There is optimism that with Brian Daboll, Daniel Jones will have similar success. But if he doesn't, if he gets injured again, you want to have an out if you're the Giants. So you give him a 5-year deal, which allows you to spread out the signing bonus for the maximum number of years, which in this case is 5. And then you throw in that option bonus in year 4 of the deal, so that if Daniel continues to ascend, now you're adjusting his pay, because the option bonus, remember, doesn't start to prorate until the first year it's included in the contract. So if the option bonus is included in year 4, and let's say it's $4 million, it prorates $2 million in year 4, $2 million in year 5. If the Giants don't pick that up, then guess what? All they're on the hook for is the dead money at that point and what's left of the prorated signing bonus. So if Daniel gets a $20 million signing bonus, and the Giants decide to get out of that contract after 3 years, they're on the hook for $8 million if they make him a pre-June 1st transaction, or $4 million in year 4 and $4 million in year 5. So that's a mechanism that I'm going to be looking to see if the Giants include in Daniel Jones's contract. I think that makes the most sense, especially if there is any hesitation regarding whether or not he can be the guy moving forward. I don't think there's a whole lot, but as I said, there are certain things that he needs to still show that he did not show last year. So that to me is what makes the most sense for Daniel Jones. Now let's talk about Saquon Barkley. For Saquon Barkley, I have 4 years, 54 million. That comes out to 13.5 APY. Saquon is an interesting study here. There's no question that he is one of the top running backs in the league. I was surprised that the Giants didn't use him in the passing game as much last year as I thought they would. Certainly not as much as they used as he was deployed in his rookie season. Saquon, and I did an article on this on Giants Country about his, why he's not worth Christian McCaffrey money, which is 16 million APY. Although Saquon had more rushing yardage than McCaffrey, I think McCaffrey beat him in every other macro and micro stat. So that being said, Saquon's would be 29 or pushing 30 at any rate if he got a 4-year deal. I think he just turned 26, so he would be pushing 30 by the time the deal were to end. If he continues to decline, and there were times this year that, maybe he went down a little too easily by the ankles. You can make a case sometimes that the burst wasn't always there. I mean, you saw it at times, but it wasn't there as consistently. Running backs tend to decline as they get older, no matter how good they take care of themselves. And here's the other thing. The Giants are going to hopefully get some additional playmakers on board to where Saquon doesn't have to be the focal point of the offense. You don't build an offense around a running back. You build it around the quarterback, which is why I don't think Saquon Barkley, if the report is true that he wants 16 mil per year, I don't think he gets it from the Giants. So with Saquon, amongst the things I would put into his contract, obviously, I would put some LTBEs, likely to be earned incentives, maybe a few not likely to be earned incentives, such as one for leading the league as the rushing champion. I would maybe put one in for Pro Bowl, which would be a likely to be earned incentive since he just made the Pro Bowl this year. The rushing yardage lead, that would be a not likely to be earned incentive, by the way, because he didn't do that last year. I don't think he's done it at all in his career. I would maybe put in a per game roster bonus. So for every game that he is active, we saw that with Glowinski. Glowinski got up to $300,000 for each game he was active. I would do something similar for Saquon because, while he was healthy last year, that we know of, he did have the shoulder injury, but that didn't really, cost him any time. Given his history, I would put a per game roster bonus in there so that if he has to miss any time due to injury, that stands as a cap credit for the Giants to get back at the end of the year. All right. Because remember, any bonuses that aren't collected that are likely to be earned, they get credited back to the cap. So that's how I would structure Saquon's contract. I think 4 years, 54 million. And I would probably guarantee a good 40 million of that. And again, they can do that through base salary, signing bonus. They could have a roster bonus in there. With a 4-year deal, I would probably want to get out of it after 2 if I needed to. So I could see the front part of the contract really being, heavy with incentives and stuff like that, to get so that if the Giants want to get out of it, they can. Now, some of you have asked me, what about Saquon signing the tag and doing like a sign and trade? I don't think the Giants would trade Saquon. If they haven't done it, if they didn't do it last year when they had the chance, I don't think they would do it, if he gets the tag and they can't agree on a new deal. But here's the thing with Saquon. A lot of people say, well, if the Giants can't reach a deal with him and they have to use the franchise tag, he's not going to like it. He's going to hold out. Here's what I think would happen in that scenario. Number one, if they don't reach a deal and they have to use the franchise tag, right off the bat, if the reports of the Giants offering him $12.5 million a year are true, and he's got to settle for $10 million, I'd rethink my strategy with my agent if I were him, because now he's just lost 2.5 million worth of money if he gets that tag, assuming that neither side budges. Now, would Saquon would he hold out? He might sit out the spring, might sit out part of training camp, but at the end of the day, I suspect if no deal was reached by July 15th, which is the deadline for franchise players to sign, I don't think Saquon would sit out the season. This is a guy who in the past has spoken about how he missed being away from the football field when he was injured, how he developed a new appreciation for it. I really don't think he would sit out the season. I mean, the franchise tag, if he ends up signing it, that's 10 million guaranteed in his pocket. That's a lot of money. I'd take 10 million, wouldn't you? But that being said, what I think is going to happen here, and it's interesting because initially I thought that this might be the case. And then I kind of changed my mind. And now I'm kind of back to where I was originally. Daniel Jones's contract, I suspect, is going to be a little easier to get done. Saquon's, I don't think it's going to be as easy. I think there's right now, based on reports, a difference in what his value is. And I'm hopeful that the two sides agree. What it's going to take, I don't know. But I don't think the franchise tag is necessarily a deal breaker, because remember, the purpose of the franchise tag is to buy more time. So if you don't want your player negotiating with other teams, it's a way to keep them away, because obviously if another team comes in and signs him to an offer sheet, now that team's got to give up 2 first-round picks, and no team's going to want to do that. Just not going to happen. I just don't see it happening at all. So, the bad news is once the tag is applied, so let's say the tag is applied March 7th to Saquon, and they get a deal done by March 8th. That's it. They can't use the tag on Julian Love if they wanted to. It's one tag per player per year. That's how it works. So we'll see how that works out with Saquon. But, I think last check, Joe Shane was having like a third round of discussions with Saquon's reps. And I don't know how much closer they are, but at the end of the year, Shane did mention that they weren't really close on a new deal. So I don't know how much progress they've made. Hopefully they get it done, though, because look, I would not object to having Saquon back. On the flip side, if Saquon were to move on, it would hurt, yes, but we've seen many instances, or we've seen some instances where you can get a guy in day 3 of the draft, day 2 or day 3 of the draft, and be just as effective with your running game. I mentioned Isaiah Pacheco of the Chiefs. He was a 7th round pick, and he was their leading rusher, if I'm not mistaken. Miles Sanders of the Eagles, I think, was a 2nd round pick. So he would be a day 2. It would hurt to lose Saquon because he's a great guy, great representative of the organization. But I don't think it would be the end of the world. I really don't. Not if they build up this offensive playmaker cachet that they have. So we'll see how it works out. But that's what I would do with the contracts for Saquon and Daniel. All right, coming up next, I have 2 questions from one listener as part of our listener mailbag segment. Both of them have to do with Daniel Jones. Stick around. We'll get those questions answered right after this. Hey, Giant fans, the NFL season might be over, but the NBA season is in full swing. And now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 if their first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to the point scores to the spread and more. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to fanduel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to Locked On Giants. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and in this segment, we're going to answer a listener question, as I try to do for every show. And I actually have two questions submitted to me by Richard G., both having to do with Daniel Jones. So let's jump right in and get those answered as best as possible. All right. So Richard's first question is, if I understand you correctly, you believe that if all goes right, Daniel Jones could be a top 8 to 10 quarterback. If he has the right team behind him and he gets a hot at a playoff time, he can win a Super Bowl. You see him as possibly being able to beat a Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, and Jalen Hurts team, not to mention several more young quarterbacks getting close to the elite category. Okay, I guess the question there is, do I see that for Daniel Jones? All right, let me answer that question first, Richard. Right now, I see Daniel Jones as maybe being in the top half of the league's quarterbacks. He is not top 10 just yet, in my opinion. Do I think he will eventually crack into the top 10 if things are built appropriately? I could see it happening. Do I think he will be a top 5 quarterback? I would stop short there and say that's probably more of a long shot. So do I think he could beat, a Chiefs team or an Eagles team right now? Probably not. But keep in mind, Rich, that those teams are going to change. They're going to have new personnel come in. They may lose coaches. I mean, the Eagles lost both their coordinators. So no team ever stays the same. And, while the talent level is certainly there, and, I don't know that I would necessarily say that, it's automatic that Daniel Jones can't beat the Eagles, even though that's been the case so far in his career. You got to see what happens. But to reiterate, right now, if you were to put me on the spot and say, is Daniel Jones going to be a top 5 quarterback? Right now, probably not. Could he crack the top 10 with the right moves? Yes, I could see that happening. Low top 10, but I could see that happening. All right, now for your second question. Both you and your guests have frequently commented that running backs have a limited shelf life due to constantly getting hit and exposure to injury. That being said, a significant part of Daniel Jones's game is running. I think it can be argued that he gets exposed as much as an average starting running back, NFL running back. If so, can the Giants rely on him in the long run in building a winning team? Yes and no, Rich. Yes, if he takes good care of his body, which I think he does. But here's the thing. You look at the Giants offense this past year, and who do they have as playmakers that maybe cause opposing defensive coordinators to stay up at night and worry? They had Saquon and Daniel. That was it. I think if this Giant team gets more playmakers, guys who can stretch the field, guys who can, run deep. I think if Daniel Jones starts to learn how to make plays from the pocket, which is a big, deficiency in this game right now, maybe you don't have to run him as much. I've never been a fan of a running quarterback. I think I've made that clear many, many times. I am still not a fan, even though I recognize that it is a weapon for the offense to use. But I think when you look at all the yards that Daniel Jones had to run for, how much of that was a result of the other guys just not stepping up and being able to make plays or get open or whatnot? I do not think that down the line, the Giants will get rid of the RPOs or the zone reads because, listen, that's part of the game nowadays. I do think, and it would be my hope, that down the line that they would try to maybe use them a little bit more selectively to avoid Jones potentially getting hurt. Because you're right, the injuries that he's had have come when he has been a runner. And He got lucky this year. So I don't know that I want to see Daniel Jones competing to lead the league in rushing yardage amongst quarterbacks. I don't think I want to see that. And I think, like I said, if they get some quality receivers in here who can stretch the field, who could win the contested ball, I think that will give them more options to where they don't have to lean as heavily on Daniel Jones to run the ball or Saquon Barkley to run the ball, assuming that, of course, Saquon comes back. So that's my take on that. Thank you for the question. And Giant fans, thank you for tuning in to the Locked On Giants podcast. We'll be back tomorrow with an all new episode. Until then, have a great one, everybody.